Danielle Crockett. On July 13, 2005, a man in Plant City, Florida, frantically called the police after seeing a skinny, malnourished girl at his neighbor's window. He was curious as to where the malnourished girl had come from because he lived in the neighborhood most of his life and only knew the couple living in the home next to him to have 2 sons. He was certain that the girl did not live in the home and that her poor condition was something he could not ignore. When the police arrived at the home, the investigator with the Florida Department of Children and Families was standing outside in tears. She stated the condition as unbelievable, the worst I have seen. Despite the report from the DCF information, nothing could have prepared the officers for what they were about to encounter when they entered the home. As soon as the officers entered the house, they were hit with a strong smell of urine and feces that emanated throughout the entire home. The home appliances were sticky, cockroaches crawled in masses on the floor, curtains, and lights, and piles of feces and rat droppings were spread throughout the house. It was so bad, one of the officers got sick and had to run outside of the house to throw up. 2 boys were sitting comfortably on the roach-infested sofa, unfazed. A woman, presumably the owner of the home and the boy's mother, defiantly questioned the officers, wanting to know why they were called to her house. Her name was Danielle Crockett. The officer continued to walk through the house. He soon observed a little girl lying in a fetal position on a mattress soiled with feces and urine. The girl appeared to be around 6 years old, wearing a heavily soiled diaper with feces running down her legs. A pile of dirty diapers was stacked on the bed. The girl's body was covered with rashes, insect bites, maggots, and sores. Her hair was full of lice, and her arms were full of bug bites. The sight was gory and disturbing. The officer stretched his arms toward the little girl to see if she would allow him to pick her up, but she growled at him and moved to the corner of the room. After several failed attempts, the officer picked her up and carried her out of the house. She barely weighed 46 pounds, and her ribs were clearly visible. She avoided eye contact and did not speak. When the officer questioned Michelle about the child's health, she stated, "I am doing the very best I can." When she was questioned about the state of her home, she replied, "I never knew a dirty house was against the law." She didn't seem fazed about the condition of the home or the young girl's health. The police officers left the house with the girl and took her to Tampa General Hospital. The young girl was later identified as Danielle Crockett, the daughter of Danielle Crockett. It was apparent she was never enrolled in school and had never come in contact with anyone else beside her family members, so no one outside the home knew she existed. Grunting and growling was her way of communication. Michelle told officers that her husband had passed away in 1997, leaving her to care for her 2 sons, and she struggled as a widowed single mother. She conceived Danielle after a one-night stand. Michelle claimed she had a good job in Las Vegas but lost it, and she was financially strained, and her life went downhill from there. She claimed that she lost her mobile home and all of her possessions. She couldn't afford life in Las Vegas anymore, so she moved the family to Plant City, Florida. Officers discovered that this was not the first time that authorities were called on Michelle for child neglect. In 2002, social services were called to the house several times with claims of seeing a naked, malnourished child inside the home. For reasons unknown, the children were never removed from the home. Medical doctors concluded that Danielle had never eaten solid food or had any exposure to sunlight. She was confined to a tiny room her entire childhood. She also had issues complying with the medical staff because she was not used to interacting with people. She growled and kicked staff members who were trying to care for her. Following her medical evaluation, doctors concluded that she had a mental state of a 6-month-old, even though she was 6 years old. She could not eat solid food and had always been fed from a bottle. She still wore diapers because she was never potty trained. Her motor skills were poor as well. She could only crawl instead of walking. Doctors determined that she wasn't provided the essential stimulation to develop properly like a normal human. For 6 months, medical professionals provided Danielle treatment to help her survive physically and psychologically because her brain was underdeveloped. During Danielle's stay in the hospital, her mother, Danielle Crockett, was arrested. Michelle was charged with 2 felony counts of child neglect and stripped of her parental rights. Michelle never served any time for the child abuse, neglect, and child endangerment offenses despite the severity of the case. Danielle eventually was discharged from the hospital and placed in a foster home in Land O'Lakes. She spent over a year and a half in the home, where she routinely participated in therapy sessions and worked with a speech therapist. She was also assigned a caseworker who took a photo of Danielle and added it to a Heart Gallery adoption event, which helps connect children with prospective adoptive parents to provide a permanent, loving home. A couple, Bernie and Diana Leroux, came across Danielle's photo at the gallery and offered to adopt her. At that time, the couple already had 5 boys of their own, but they always wanted a daughter, and they felt Danielle needed them. The couple was informed that she needed intensive care and attention because she suffered from environmental autism due to her lack of interactions growing up. Even though she was almost 9, she still used diapers. She couldn't speak at all or sleep well during the night. She also had occasional tantrums, which ended in her curling in a fetal position, and she never showed any emotion. Overall, she was much different from every normal child. However, despite all of Danielle's issues, the couple was eager to adopt her. They continued with the adoption process and finalized the adoption in October 2007. Shortly after finalizing the adoption, the couple moved from Florida to Tennessee, where Bernie worked on a farm and reared animals. Danielle continued receiving occupational therapy, private speech therapy lessons, swimming lessons, and physical therapy for her motor skills. She was enrolled in a public school and attended special education classes. Gradually, her condition improved, and she was able to do simple tasks like putting on her sneakers and filling the bathtub. The Leroux's loving home brought tremendous changes in Danielle's life. Unfortunately, Bernie and Diana ended their marriage of 18 years and officially got a divorce in 2015. Nevertheless, Bernie could not bear the agony of placing Danielle back in foster care, so he kept her in his care. He kept caring for her because she could not live independently due to her stunted development. However, Bernie became saddled with too much responsibility because he had to make a living and take care of Danielle around the clock. Bernie waited until she was 18, eligible for Social Security, and able to receive government health insurance before placing Danielle in a group home in Murfreesboro, Tennessee. To this day, Danielle still can't speak, but she can listen to conversations, understands what people say, and can indicate a response to it. She can now chew on solid food, make eye contact with people, and also swim. She also allows people to touch her physically to an extent. However, only her aide, Shannon Wilson, is allowed to comb her hair. She still ignores happenings around her and has switched from sucking her thumb to scratching her arm. On the other hand, Bernie never gave up on her as he still visits her every month at the group home.